When did kindness become controversial? Seriously, I'm super passionate about this particular topic. At what point did being kind become something people felt that they needed to defend? Here's the thing. Somewhere along the way, kindness picked up a reputation it never deserved. People started confusing it with weakness or passivity or being naive or with allowing people to walk all over you. And I think that's a big mistake because if we're being honest, kindness actually isn't easy. Anyone can lose their temper, anyone can be rude, or anyone can fire off an angry comment, hold a grudge, or make everyone else's day a little worse. That doesn't require much effort. And quite frankly, it doesn't require much smarts either. What requires effort is remaining kind when life gives you every reason not to be. What requires strength is keeping your composure when you're frustrated, or showing grace when someone else doesn't deserve it. Responding thoughtfully when it would be easier to react emotionally. That's not weakness. That's discipline. And discipline is a form of strength. The truth is, every one of us has probably experienced a moment where our kindness was misunderstood. Maybe someone took advantage of it, or maybe someone assumed it meant we lacked confidence, or maybe someone mistook our patience for permission. Think about that one. Experiences like those can make us want to build walls around our hearts. They can convince us that being harder is somehow safer. But harder doesn't always mean stronger. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let someone else's behavior change the kind of person you've decided to become. Now, don't misunderstand me. This episode is not about becoming a doormat or somebody else's punching bag. It's not about tolerating abuse, and it's certainly not about pretending everything is okay when it isn't. You can be kind and still have boundaries. You can be kind and still stand up for yourself. And you can be kind and still be incredibly strong. In fact, I would argue that some of the strongest people I've ever met weren't the loudest people in the room. They weren't the most intimidating, and they weren't the most aggressive. They were the people who had the ability to remain calm, thoughtful, and compassionate when everyone else was losing their minds. That's power. That's real power. So today, I'd like to challenge a belief that many people have accepted without really examining it. The belief that kindness is weakness. Because I think the opposite may be true. I think kindness is one of the strongest things a human being can choose. And if that's true, then perhaps the world doesn't need fewer kind people. Perhaps it needs more people who are strong enough to be kind. Are you ready? I am. I'm Jonah. I'm your person. Let's get the heck to it. Welcome back to the show. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome everybody joining us from around the world. Whether you're listening from France, South Korea, New Zealand, Ireland, Singapore, Italy, the Philippines, or somewhere else across the 76 countries that now make up this incredible community, thank you for spending part of your day with me. It means more than you know. Now, let's get into it. I think one of the biggest myths we've accepted as a society is this: that kindness and strength are opposites. And somewhere along the way, we started believing that if someone is kind, they must also be soft. Easy to manipulate, easy to intimidate, someone who avoids conflict because they're afraid of it. But I don't think that's true at all. In fact, I think we've confused aggression with strength for far too long. Just because someone is loud doesn't make them confident. And just because someone is intimidating doesn't make them strong. And just because someone wins an argument doesn't mean they've demonstrated character. Real strength isn't measured how much noise we can make. It's measured by how much control we have over ourselves. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can insult another person, and anyone can react emotionally in the heat of the moment. But not everyone can pause, and not everybody can choose patience over pride. And not everyone can respond with respect when they're being disrespected. That takes strength. The kind of strength that no one applauds for in the moment, but everyone remembers later, though. When I think about the strongest people I've met throughout my life, I rarely remember them because they were the toughest person in the room. I remember them because they made other people feel safe. They listened before they spoke. They stood up for what was right where everybody else was tearing someone else down. They could disagree without becoming disagreeable. To me, that's what strength looks like. Not dominance, not intimidation, but self-control. And I think that's the first step towards reclaiming what kindness was always meant to be. Because kindness isn't the absence of strength. It's strength that's being brought under control. Let's explore that here in part 2. All right, let's build on that last thought. The moment people hear a conversation about kindness, someone inevitably says, "But if I'm kind, people will take advantage of me." Maybe you've thought that yourself, or maybe you've experienced it. If you have, I'm sorry to hear that. It can be incredibly painful. I've been there too, and it doesn't feel good. There are people in this world who mistake kindness for permission to cross your boundaries, permission to be disrespectful, or permission to continue behaviors they should have stopped long ago. But that's not a kindness problem. That's a boundaries problem. Kindness has never required you to accept abuse. It has never required you to stay silent when someone else is treating you unfairly or like crap. It has never required you to sacrifice your dignity in order to make someone else comfortable. In fact, some of the kindest people I've ever met have also been some of the strongest. They know how to say no. They know how to have difficult conversations. They know how to hold people accountable. The difference is they don't weaponize those moments. They don't belittle. They don't humiliate. They don't look for ways to win at someone else's expense. They communicate with respect because they understand something many people never learn. Being firm and being cruel are not the same thing. You can disagree without becoming disrespectful. You can defend yourself without attacking someone else. You can establish boundaries without building walls. That is real emotional strength. Think about the people you've respected most throughout your life. Was it the person who always had the loudest voice? Or was it the person who could walk into a tense room and somehow lower the temperature? Or the person who listened before reacting? The person who treated everyone with dignity even when disagreement was unavoidable? That's leadership. That's maturity. And that's the kind of strength our world desperately needs more than ever at this moment. Because kindness isn't about avoiding conflict. Sometimes, kindness requires us to step directly into it, to tell someone the truth, to protect someone who's vulnerable, or to say, "This isn't okay." Not with anger, not with hate, but with conviction. That's what makes kindness so remarkable. It isn't weakness pretending to be strength. It's strength choosing not to become weakness. And there's a profound difference between those two. Here's a takeaway for you. Kindness is not surrender. Let's look at what some of the strongest people have in common next in part 3. When I think back over my life, the people who influenced me the most weren't always the smartest, and they always weren't the most successful or the most charismatic. They were people who had a quiet strength about them, the kind of people who could walk into chaos without becoming a part of it. Have you ever met anybody like that? A person who could have every reason to lose their patience and somehow didn't. Someone who had the ability to calm a room instead of inflaming it. Or someone who made you feel heard, even when they disagreed with you. I've always admired people like that. Because I don't think that's a personality trait. I think it's a decision. A decision made over and over again to pause before speaking, to listen before assuming, or to understand before judging, to respond instead of reacting. That's not something we're born with. That's something we practice. And practice eventually becomes part of your character. Here's a question I'd like for you to think about. If two people are standing in front of you during a disagreement, One is yelling, interrupting, trying to dominate the conversation. The other one, they're calm. They're listening, speaking with confidence but without contempt. Which one feels stronger to you? I think most people know the answer to that. Because deep down, we recognize that self-control is one of the highest forms of strength. Anyone can throw gasoline on a fire. Anybody can have a fit or throw a tantrum. But not everyone can be the person carrying the bucket of water. That takes courage. It takes confidence. It takes security in who you are. And maybe that's why kindness is so misunderstood. People see calmness and they see patience. They see grace. But what they don't see is the strength it takes to choose those things. They don't see the hundreds of decisions behind that one comment, the restraint or the wisdom or the maturity. So the next time you meet someone whose kindness leaves an impression on you, don't mistake it for weakness. Recognize it for what it probably is. One of the greatest displays of strength you'll ever witness. Let's look at what happens when that kind of strength begins changing the people around us here in part 4. Have you ever noticed that certain people have the ability to change the atmosphere of a room simply by walking into it? Sometimes it's for the worse, though. Everyone becomes tense. People stop talking. The energy shifts. But then there are those rare people who have the opposite effect. They don't demand attention. They don't try to become the center of the conversation. They simply bring a sense of calm with them. I don't think that's accidental. I think kindness is contagious. Not every single time, and not with every single person, but far more often than we realize. Think about the last time someone genuinely smiled at you, held the door open, or thanked you, listened to what you had to say without interrupting, or extended a little grace when they didn't have to. Those moments are usually small, so small that the person offering them may not even remember them the next day, but the person receiving them often does. Kindness has a ripple effect. One thoughtful interaction can influence the next conversation. And that next conversation can influence the next decision. And that next decision can influence the next relationship. Before long, one simple act has reached people you'll never meet. That's remarkable when you think about it. It also means that every single one of us has more influence than we realize. Whether you're leading a company, raising children, serving customers, coaching a team, or simply standing in line at the grocery store, you're constantly contributing to the emotional environment around you. People remember how you made them feel. Long after they've forgotten your words, long after they've forgotten what you're wearing, and long after you've forgotten the details. They remember how you treated them. That's why kindness matters. Not because it's polite, and not because society tells you we should, but because it has the power to leave people better than we found them. And if enough of us made that our daily goal, imagine how many rooms, conversations, families, workplaces, and communities could feel different. Sometimes changing the world doesn't begin with a grand gesture. Sometimes it begins with changing the room you're already standing in. Let's put that idea into practice. Here's your first challenge. This week, choose one place you'll be in, a meeting, your workplace, your home, or a coffee shop, anywhere. Walk in with one intention. I'm going to leave this place a little better than I found it. Don't force it. Don't announce it. Just let your kindness, patience, and presence quietly change the room. Then notice what changes, not only around you, but within you. Before we jump back into the show, I just wanted to say thank you. Whether this is your first episode or you've been with me since day one, I truly appreciate you so much for spending part of your week here with me. If you're enjoying the show, here's my challenge for you. Take 10 seconds and hit follow or subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening from. That way, every episode is waiting for you when it drops. And if today's conversation made you think, made you smile, made you giggle, or reminded you of someone in your life, share it with them. You never know when one conversation can make a real difference for someone else. If you'd like even more content throughout the week, come hang out with me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, LinkedIn, Threads, or Blue Sky. there's more content being dropped on my socials. Leave a comment. Join the discussion. I'd love to hear your perspective. All right, now let's get back to the show. Here in part 5, we're going to talk about why some people reject kindness. Here's something I've noticed. Not everyone knows what to do with kindness. Have you ever smiled at someone and they looked suspicious? Or held the door open and they barely acknowledge you? Or even offered a genuine compliment and they question your motives? Why is that? I don't think it's because people are naturally cynical. I think life has a way of teaching some people to become cautious. Think about it. Some have been lied to. I mean, we've all been lied to. Some have been manipulated. Some have mistaken someone's kindness for hidden intentions because that's all they've ever experienced. When trust has been broken enough times, genuine kindness can feel unfamiliar. And unfortunately, unfamiliar things often make us uncomfortable. So instead of accepting kindness, some people push it away. Not because they don't want it, because they don't know if they can believe it. That realization changed the way I look at people. When someone responds harshly, maybe there's a story I don't know. When someone sounds or seems angry at the world, maybe they're carrying pain they haven't been able to put down. Now, that doesn't excuse bad behavior. People are still responsible of how they treat others. But understanding someone is very different from agreeing with them. And sometimes, understanding creates compassion. Here's the part I hope you'll remember. Don't let someone else's bitterness become your blueprint. Don't let someone else's anger become your personality. And don't let someone else's wounds convince you to stop being the person you've worked so hard to become. Because that's exactly how kindness disappears from the world. One disappointed person at a time, one broken relationship at a time, one cynical decision at a time. Instead, let your kindness be your choice, not your transaction. Not something you offer only when people deserve it, but something that reflects your character. Because your character shouldn't be determined by the worst behavior of someone else. It should be determined by the best values within you. The world has enough people who know how to criticize, enough people who know how to tear others down, or enough people who are convinced that meanness somehow makes them powerful. Choose a different path. Anyone can be kind when circumstances are pleasant. The real question is, what do we choose when kindness costs us something? Let's explore that next. Anyone can be kind when life is going well, or in any number of other situations, when people agree with us, when we're respected, or when we're appreciated, or when everything feels fair. But that's not where character is revealed. Character is revealed when kindness becomes difficult, when somebody cuts you off in traffic, when a coworker takes credit for your work, or when a stranger speaks to you with disrespect, when someone criticizes you unfairly, or when a friend lets you down, when life simply isn't going your way. Those are the moments that define us, not because they're easy, because they aren't. Let's be honest. Sometimes the first response that comes to mind isn't our best response. It's sarcasm. It's anger. It's revenge. It's, I'll show them. We've all been there. I know I have. Many times. But here's something I've learned. Just because reaction is understandable doesn't mean that it's the right response. There's a difference between reacting to someone and responding from your values. One gives your emotions control. The other reminds you that no one gets to decide the kind of person you're going to be except for you. That's real freedom. It's also one of the greatest demonstrations of strength. Because when you choose kindness in a difficult moment, you're not saying the other person's behavior was acceptable. You're saying your character isn't for sale. It won't be determined by someone else's bad day, or somebody's bad attitude, or even somebody's poor choices. Think about that. How much of our peace do we surrender because we allow another person's behavior to dictate our own? Imagine taking that control back. Imagine becoming the kind of person whose values remain steady, even when the world around us isn't. I believe that that's one of the highest levels of personal strength. Not pretending difficult people don't exist, or not avoiding conflict, but refusing to let someone else's darkness convince you to dim your own light. Because in the end, kindness isn't a gift we give only to other people. It's a promise we make to ourselves about who we choose to be. And that's a promise worth keeping, wouldn't you agree? Let's finish by talking about the legacy that kindness leaves behind. But first, here's your second challenge. The next time someone frustrates you, pause before you respond and ask yourself one question. What response would the best version of me choose right now? Then choose that response. Not because they've earned it, because that's the person you're becoming. I'd like to leave you with one final idea before we bring this conversation to a close. Most of us spend our lives wondering whether we've made a difference. Did our work matter? Did our efforts matter? Did our lives matter? I think we're asking the wrong question, though. Maybe the better question is this. Who was better because I was here? Not because you were famous, and not because you were wealthy, or not because you accomplished something extraordinary. Simply because someone crossed paths with you. Think about the people you remember most. Chances are, you don't remember every conversation. You don't remember every word they said. And you probably don't remember what they were wearing. But I'll bet you remember how they made you feel. You remember the teacher who believed in you before you believed in yourself. The coach who refused to let you quit. A friend who showed up when everyone else disappeared. Or the stranger who extended unexpected grace at exactly the right moment. None of those moments made headlines, yet they changed lives. That's the power of kindness. It leaves fingerprints on hearts we'll never fully see. And here's the beautiful part. You don't have to wait until you're more successful. You don't have to wait until you're more confident. You don't have to wait until life shows up. You don't have to wait until life slows down. You can become that person today with one conversation, one encouraging word, one act of patience, one decision to see humanity in someone who desperately needs it. Friends, never underestimate the impact of an ordinary moment handled extraordinarily well. Because whilst the world often celebrates the loudest voices, history is quietly shaped by people who consistently choose character over ego, or compassion over cruelty, and grace over resentment. My hope for you isn't simply that people remember your name. It's that they remember how they felt after spending time with you. That when they think of you years from now, they remember someone who brought peace instead of chaos, or hope instead of discouragement, and kindness instead of judgment. If that becomes your legacy, I think you'll have lived a remarkable life. All right, let's bring this home. You know, the more I think about today's conversation, the more convinced I become that kindness is one of the greatest acts of quiet courage we can have. Not because it's always appreciated, not because it's always returned, but because it reflects the decision about who we are, not who everyone else is. You don't control whether people are honest. You don't control whether people are respectful. You don't control whether people are patient, understanding, or compassionate. But you do control what you contribute to the world. And I think that's where our attention belongs. It's easy to look around and say, people should be kinder. They're right, they should. But real change has never started with everyone else. It starts with someone. Why not let that be you? Imagine if every room you walked into became a little bit more calmer because you were there. Imagine if every conversation became just a little more respectful because you were part of it. Imagine if every disagreement ended with a little more dignity because you refused to make winning more important than the person standing across from you. That kind of life won't always be noticed. It probably won't even earn headlines. But it will earn something far more valuable. Trust, respect, influence, and a legacy that quietly lives on in people whose lives you touched. So this week, don't measure success only by what you accomplish. Measure it by what you contribute, by the encouragement you offered, by the patience you practiced, by the grace you extended, and by the person who walked away feeling just a little bit lighter because they crossed paths with you. Because in the end, people may forget our accomplishments, They may forget our titles, and they may even forget our names, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And if we can leave this world with a little bit more kindness than we found it, I think we'll have done something truly extraordinary. All right, that's it for today. Join me each week for a new episode, but for now, thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks for coming back, and we'll see you next week.